Hello there. Hopefully the camera is close enough to pick that up. So today I want to talk about something interesting I encountered doing some research. I've been trying to familiarize myself with more of the Dutch sources because I haven't really engaged with them before. I'm reading this one source. It's a fellow called David de Vries, I don't know. He's a sea captain who's also responsible for some of the administration of New Netherlands. So at one point he sails up the Hudson River to where it meets the Mohawk River because he has to resolve a dispute between some Dutchmen and the Mohawks. A Dutchman has murdered a Mohawk and he has to resolve this in a way that the Mohawks feel are just so that there isn't a war. And this fellow has sort of an unusual attitude towards indigenous people. His attitude is that basically all these Indians out here, they're kind of just like those Catholics in that they're very barbarous and they believe a lot of garbage, but they're mostly harmless provided you don't wrong them. So just don't wrong them and you're perfectly safe going amongst them, even unarmed. Which is not a common perspective among this fellow's contemporaries. So he successfully resolves the dispute and he relates his adventure in his account. Then he goes into an ethnography of the Mohawk people. And in reading this, something interesting struck me. I think I've read this before. Yeah, I've definitely read this before. I think for a minute, I know exactly where this is from. So his whole ethnography section is just straight up plagiarism of this Calvinist missionary called Vries and Megapolensis. And the only reason I remember it's Vries and Megapolensis is because his account is it's just comical for the levels of slander he stoops to. With a lot of these Jesuits, they talk about some negative and nasty stuff. And for a lot of them, it's kind of up in the air about how much of it is true. Okay, I know that he's exaggerating here. It isn't all true, but is some of it true? And I have to sort of waffle back and forth, and I eventually just throw my hands up in the air and say, oh, to heck with it, I don't really care. Vries and Megapolensis, his account was so nasty that I know it's not true. It's just comical. His account of Mohawk religion is something like they have two gods, a good one and an evil one, and they've chosen to worship the evil one. And their sole means of worship is by eating babies in caves. So when times are good, they eat lots of babies in caves in order to honor their god. And when times are bad, they eat babies in caves in order to apologize, and they promise to eat more babies in caves in the future. And it's just the most... What's that meme from Mean Girls? This guy is a nasty skank, do not trust him, he is a fugly slut. That's what he wrote. That's the kind of stuff that he wrote. So this captain, David de Vries, he literally copied Vries and Megapolensis' memoir into his memoir, just word for word. He didn't even bother to anonymize it. It's one of the laziest bits of plagiarism that I've ever encountered. Like, for one chapter of this sea captain's memoir, he turns into a priest. At one point in Megapolensis' account, he negotiates the release of a French prisoner of war, a French missionary who's been captured by the Mohawks and he's about to be put to death, but he comes in and barters for his release. And that's in this sea captain's account. He didn't even bother to take out stuff like that. It's just bizarre. I sort of think this is an interesting educational example because for some reason this sea captain felt the need to include an ethnography in his memoir. Presumably, he wants to be considered an authority on these Indians out here, and he wants to demonstrate it. Demonstrate his vast wealth of knowledge on the customs and traditions of the people he's encountering, the people he's dealing with. Even though he hasn't really had very much dealings with the Mohawk people. His sole dealing was to come up this river, resolve the dispute, and then go back down to the ocean. He didn't live among them, he didn't know their customs, but he wanted to include this ethnography. This was important enough to him that he felt the need to plagiarize, in order that he be taken seriously as an authority, as someone knowledgeable about these Indians and their customs. He had some personal experience with the people down on the coast. He included an ethnography of them. I think he wrote it himself. He wasn't very knowledgeable about the Mohawk people. He needs to include an ethnography for consistency's sake. Oh, so you're knowledgeable about those Mi'kmaq down on the coast or whatever? But you're not knowledgeable about these Mohawks? Well, maybe you're not knowledgeable about any of them at all. Maybe you're just making all of this up. I think he felt that the legitimacy of his experience might be questioned if he didn't include an ethnography. But at the same time, he didn't really have enough to base a comprehensive ethnography off of. He didn't spend much time among them. So, plagiarism. I sort of wonder, how common is this plagiarism for the sake of clout among these historical writers? If you were cleverer about it, I think you could get away with it pretty comprehensively. Even this guy, if he'd simply taken all of the details of Megapolensis' account, but then just changed the wording, I wouldn't have caught it. I caught it specifically because the wording was so extreme. And I really wonder about that. I've also been doing a close reading of Gabriel Sagard's Long Journey to the Country of the Hurons. I've been reading a lot of excerpts from it on this channel. I've been doing a close read to look for more interesting little bits that I can bring out and talk about. They're really easy video content. One of his sections, he's talking about marriage customs. So he goes on about the sort of marriage and courtship and this, that, and the other. And then there's a section about like the rampant infidelity and just the general looseness of all these Indian women. And it's sort of in a different character from the rest of what he's been writing. And then I read the footnote. There's a footnote made by the translator, and the footnote says, "This paragraph is taken almost verbatim from Champlain." Okay, so Gabriel Sagard plagiarized Champlain here. Why did he do that? Well, maybe it's the same reason as this Dutchman. I want to write a comprehensive ethnography of these Hurons. I don't want to miss any little details. Champlain talks about the rampant infidelity and the looseness of the women, so... Well, I didn't see any of that, but I suppose I got to include it. So he copies Champlain into his own writing. I suspect that there might be a heck of a lot of this going on throughout these early sources. I'm going to have to do some digging to see if I can find any more examples. I suspect that there's rather a lot of it, and I also suspect that I'm probably not going to be able to catch much of it, because if you're at all a decent writer, it's not too hard to just change the details, make something look like your own. That was just something interesting I noticed, and I hope you found this interesting too. So long.